I am super excited to be here to share a continuation of our dojo evolution at Delta Airlines. If you remember last year, my leader, Keenan Wold, gave this talk initially. So I'm here to just give you an update on where we are and also walk you back through our dojo history. So the first thing I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about who we are at Delta Airlines. So anybody heard of us? Heard of Delta Airlines? Oh, come on. No, okay, all right. Well, we serve over 200 million customers every single year, connecting them to over 300 destinations in over 50 countries. We also are headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, which is my hometown. It's also home to the headquarters, the world's largest hub with over 1,000 daily departures to over 225 destinations. So all of that connectivity is enabled by 90,000 of some pretty exceptional employees. I'm a little bit biased, but I really think that we have an exceptional culture, and it's really an amazing place to work. So that kind of speaks to my next slide, which talks about some of the awards that we've seen this year. So the first one that we got this year was the Best U.S. Airline by TPG. Another thing that came this year was we were identified as a best workplace for women. This was an awesome award this was an awesome thing to be identified for because we were the only airline to be on this list, which is really amazing. And one of the reasons I feel like we made this list is because we were able to achieve 100% pay parity this year, and we also have a lot of great women leaders, not only in the workforce, but also in management and above positions, so it's really great. Another thing we got this year was a great place to work for millennials. We were also the only airline to make it on that list. And one of the reasons I think we are on this list is because we have a lot of trust in leadership, and we also have a very fair system. It's really a great place to be. Now, the last one, you might not have guessed that we would be considered a top company for software engineers, but we made that list as well. I think it goes to show the innovation that we've been delivering in the past few years when it comes to our mobile application and our award-winning website. We're doing a lot of great things at Delta Airlines. So I'll tell you a little bit now about myself. So I've been at Delta Airlines for 3 years. I've been in IT for 6 years. And my time at Delta has been a very wild ride. So in 3 years, I've held 4 positions. I started off on the DevOps Center of Excellence as a systems engineer. I had a hand in implementing a lot of our tooling, our core foundational modern tooling, like GitLab, Jenkins, and Nexus, and helped standing that up for the enterprise. I then progressed into a DevOps coaching role in the dojo, which is what you're here to hear about today. And in that role, I was able to enable development teams, adopt our software, and utilize enterprise best practices so that they can be successful. In my next role, I became the dojo leader, in which I was responsible for ensuring that all the teams that came through our dojo had a great and consistent experience. And I was also responsible for KPIs and making sure that we justify the existence of the dojo to leadership. So that was a fun gig. Fast forward to now. I'm the manager of the DevOps Center of Excellence at Delta, where I'm responsible for many different things, all enabling DevOps culture, practice, and core foundational tooling. All right, so now I'll tell you a little bit about my team. So the DevOps Center of Excellence, we have 3 different areas within our team. The first one is our core tooling offering. So this is the part of my team that enables and administers all the tooling that I just talked about, GitLab, Jenkins, Nexus, and also Slack now. And the main component of that team is making sure that our tools are available and have the resilience necessary to support mission-critical application teams. So we've been able to do that successfully in the past 3 years. I'm going to skip to the other side on the PaaS app dev. So this component of my team is responsible for enabling the adoption of cloud at Delta. So we just embarked on a cloud-native journey in which we purchased a Kubernetes orchestration platform as a service, OpenShift. So this part of my team is really making sure that teams can easily adopt that and do great things. As you all know, if you're on a cloud native journey, it's a huge mind shift to go from developing monolithic applications to cloud native ones. So we're also responsibility for instilling that within development teams. Now, the middle part is the dojo, in which we evangelize and really share all those best practices with the teams that participate. So next we'll talk about our dojo history. So our initial onset was at the end of 2016 and when we started the speed to market efforts at Delta. So this is essentially when we set out to transform and work to deliver faster, better, and more efficiently. And in the beginning of 2017, we partnered with some like-minded companies and were able to visit their dojos and see what they had going on, Target being one of the main ones. I was actually a part of that first Target visit, and it really made an impression on us at Delta. So after those visits, we were forming DevOps Center of Excellence, we were forming Agile Center of Excellence, and also an API Center of Excellence. So we thought about it and we said, we have all of these pockets of, excellence at Delta. So how can we bring them all together to ensure that teams can adopt all of the great things that these individual entities have to offer? So we said, we're going to do a dojo. And we did it. And it wasn't easy because we actually partnered with Point B, because they had experience with standing up newer entities, so they helped us establish the structure and also make sure that our facilities could support all development teams. In the middle, of 2018, June exactly, we were actually able to launch our dojo on June 6th, I remember the exact day, with 3 development teams. And these teams were of varying maturities, and that's when we started. After we started with those teams, we were able to actually stand up a satellite dojo in Minneapolis, which was really great because if you know anything about Delta, we have 2 real main IT hubs, one being in Atlanta and another one being in Minneapolis with the acquisition of NWA. So we wanted to ensure that we were connecting our employees in both locations. So that was a great step in that direction. So that brings us to now. In 2018, we really focused on teams, which is still our main focus in the dojo, but we really had an established, really solid, concrete program in 8 weeks. So we said, a team, they have to come for the 8 weeks, they have to stay, and you're gonna like it, damn it. And they did, they liked it. And our curriculum was inclusive of all the competency offerings. So we had Agile, API, DevOps, Cloud, QA, QE, and security. So it was really set, really just kind of like in a box. You had it, we gave it to you, and you took it and adopted it. Fast forward to 2019, we're still team focused, but we offer now flexible durations because what we found is that teams were not able to really commit that set amount of time. 8 weeks is a long time for a team. So we now offer variable durations for dojo engagements. We also now offer individual competency offerings. So instead of giving teams everything, we do more discovery to figure out what is the most meaningful engagement for them. What can we offer them that they actually need and will go ahead and use? Because all in all, if we're giving teams information that they're not going to utilize immediately, it's kind of waste in a way because we all know that we don't retain everything unless we're actually going and do it. So we want to make sure that we're giving them things that they can do. Lastly, this year we're focused on enabling scaled teams. So when you think about enabling a development team, they're probably most likely a part of a larger value stream. So we're focused on really identifying those value streams right now and ensuring that all the teams can be great in practice agility and practice DevOps. So those are our focuses. So this is a diagram showing the 2 different tracks. And essentially all of our dojo engagements start with a discovery or intake. So this is the time that we spend with the team to understand exactly where they are and where they want to go. A lot of times teams, they just come looking for one thing. And as a result of their discovery and intake, they were like, wait, we want that too. So it's really great to see teams learn more about our curriculum offerings and really want to really take it all in. So on the top line, we have our Dojo Lite, which is that variable duration experience that I talked about, where we can focus on one competency area versus giving them the gamut. And that engagement essentially is really focused on outcomes. So we really want to know exactly what a team wants to accomplish, because that is going to determine how long we engage and exactly what we teach them. So that's our first step for a Dojo Lite engagement. For the Dojo immersive experience, which is 8 weeks, we focus on offering a team a foundational learning experience first, and then discovering more about what they need as we go throughout that process and iterate with them. Both of the engagements then go to a coaching and measuring phase. The difference between the two engagements being that in the 8-week one, we measure them multiple times to make sure that they're progressing and growing throughout their experience. At the end of all of this, we check in with the teams. Sometimes they even check in with us before we check in with them. So that's really great. But really, it's all in all to make sure that they have not regressed to previous behaviors, and really see if there's any other opportunities for coaching that we could offer them. So now that you have an understanding of what our dojo engagement looks like, this is what our facilities changes have been over the past year. So in 2018, we had the capacity for 9 teams across our Atlanta and Minneapolis dojos. Now we have the capacity for 14 teams. We did some construction in Minneapolis, and we have larger spaces, and more teams can engage with us there. Also very important change is that we have more collaboration spaces. This is something that we got from the teams, feedback that we got from the teams, that they really wanted space to collaborate and not booking meeting rooms. They just wanted to go and do it. They didn't want to have to go through any red tape to try to come together. And so we wanted to make sure that we were enabling that. Lastly, in 2019, which we just introduced, is flexible pod spaces. So earlier this year, we visited the Target dojo, the in-town dojo, and they had a really great concept of pods. So the idea of a pod is that you have a team shaped as a U, the desk, and they're facing outward into their workstation, but you also have meeting spaces in the middle where they can come together, do quick ceremonies, retrospectives, and really, start to collaborate more as they need. So we tried that as well. So here are a few pictures of our updated dojo spaces. So you'll see in the top 2 pictures, that's our Minneapolis dojo. The middle one is a team collaborating or mobbing in one of the pods. And in this one as well, the one in the lower left corner as well. The top right corner is our Atlanta dojo. We're still waiting on painting our Minneapolis dojo. It'll look pretty in the next few months, hopefully. But yeah, this is what our dojo currently looks like. All right, so what are some wins that we've seen in the past in the past year? So far, we've engaged 29 teams in our 8-week immersive experience. These teams have delivered everything from customer-facing software or even internal software to enable our employees to engage better with each other. We've had 12 teams participate in our Dojo Lite engagement, which is great because we just introduced that in June, and we've seen astounding adoption of that. Teams really like it. The shift has been, usually a lot of our teams wanted the 8-week experience. Now 80% of our new engagements are Dojo Lite engagements, so it was the right thing to do. We also accomplished coaching 8 out of 10 tenets of our technical architecture, vision, and framework at Delta. So this is a mandated framework that we're pretty much allowing all of our new development has to be in line with this. So essentially, if a team has a new effort that they're delivering, we have the ability to coach them to make sure that they're reaching those new heights that we're setting for software development at Delta. So kind of small, in the right corner, we have our time to deploy into our new platform as a service, OpenShift. So we've done some really experimental things in our dojo, one being mob programming. Anybody familiar with mob programming? Nice. So this is something that we learned through a dojo consortium conference that we went to earlier this year. And one of the presenters, and we were like, wow, we should use that. And the first time we did, it reduced our time to deploy into our sandbox in our platform as a service by literally crazy amount. So you'll see here that before it took 35 or about 32 hours. Now we're down to less than 5 hours just from going facilitating it via mobbing. So we've seen really great growth there. Other wins that we've seen. So I talked about measurement and how we measure teams. So we've seen teams really grow leaps and bounds throughout their 8-week engagements. The diagram to your left, you'll see our spider diagram. So we measure teams in different competency areas, the way they work through Agile, velocity, and their practices, and also DevOps, including how they're using the tools and how their DevOps culture is. So in an 8-week time frame, this is one of our teams, and you can see the growth. Like, they started off as the blue, and at the end of their 8 weeks, they were at the orange. And these are assessments that are facilitated by the development team. So there's no coaching. We give them the same questions, and they take the assessment themselves, and this is the growth that we've seen. So it's pretty impressive. Last year, our Net Promoter Score was around 87%, and since we introduced the Dojo Lite engagement, that has reached 96% satisfaction rate by all the teams that engage. So that just goes to show that by focusing on team's outcomes, they find that experience much more valuable, and they're willing to promote that and tell their peers about it. So we're really proud of that number. So I can't leave the stage without recognizing the amazing Dojo community that has helped us get these wins. So there's a Dojo Consortium talk tomorrow. Shameless plug, go and hear that, because it's a great community. You all are part of the DevOps Enterprise Summit community, but if you're thinking about starting a dojo, that is the right one to be a part of as well, because we laugh, we also cry together, but we're all in this together, and we have a lot of things to share. So these are just a few pictures of some things that we do in the Dojo community. Outside of the consortium, in your local areas, there may be some Dojo practitioners. In Atlanta, we have a couple of companies that we work with, like Coca-Cola, and we meet and we talk about how we're implementing agility in our respective companies. So definitely reach out. There's lots of people doing the same things out there. Next, we'll talk about our challenges. So everything, is not all hunky-dory at all times. We have growth, but we also still have challenges. One being defining metrics. And metrics in the sense of, not only having metrics from a dojo standpoint, but also making sure that those metrics align with the organization. Because we want to make sure that all of our development teams are beating to the same drumming to the same beat as their organizational counterparts. So that's still a challenge for us, and we're working on aligning that. And yesterday, Scott Prue, he said something, and I had to add it to my slide. Modernization is never done. This is a challenge that we see because a lot of times when teams come into the dojo, we're like, oh, we're done, right? No, you're never done. You're going to probably have to come back because change is inevitable, right? We all know it from being DevOps practitioners that change is the only constant. So we want to make sure that modernization is never done and that we're keeping in that learning and growth mindset. Our last challenge, and this is probably the hardest one, and what the meme is referring to, is the mindset shift. So one of the hardest things that I've seen from a DevOps standpoint is making that shift from I'm building something, then I'm giving it to someone else, and I don't care about it after that. So making the mindset shift of telling developers and instilling in them that you build it, you own it, has been a hard barrier to break, but we're still working on it. Next, these are a few lessons learned that we have. The first one is be flexible. So in the beginning of when we started the dojo, we wanted to say, okay, this is our set program, this is what we're going to do. But we quickly learned that if teams it's not conducive to how they're working already, they're not gonna wanna make a huge jump. So we had to be flexible. We had to meet teams where they are, both figuratively and literally. So one of the ways that we've had to be flexible is in even going to teams. You all saw that we have 2 dojos in Minneapolis and Atlanta. Now we're actually going to teams. So there's a lot of teams at Delta that sit with their business counterparts that don't really want to be removed from their normal workspace and have to travel in order to learn and grow. So we're actually working on going to them and actually teaching them that way. I'm still waiting on a team in Hawaii to request our services. So I'll let you know when that happens, and I'll share the pictures. Next, don't be afraid to experiment. So the same sense as mob programming, the huge amount of growth that we saw came as a result of experimentation. The dojo is the perfect place to experiment and try new things and fail fast. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So that is definitely a lesson learned for us. Thirdly, get comfortable in the unknown. So one of the things that really worries me is when I don't know things. Like, I want to know everything. So being comfortable with not knowing is something you definitely have to work with when starting a dojo and as you continue to grow it, because you don't know what's going to happen. Teams come in every day with new problems, and that's okay. Just know that you'll solve for them and you'll be a better dojo delivery team because of it. Fourth, don't be afraid to make mistakes. This goes along the same note as experimentation. There are lots of things that we've tried in our dojo that have not worked, but the greatest thing is that we've been able to learn from it. After every single dojo session, we do a retrospective as a dojo delivery team. That's what the picture is of, us doing a retro to try to grow and learn from our mistakes. A lot of the feedback that we get from the team, which is my last point, has caused us to become an amazing program. So my last point is make sure that you listen to the teams that are participating, because the feedback loop has to be open, and you have to make sure that they're comfortable giving you that so you can become a better dojo practitioner. Next, I wanted to quickly cover some of the other organizational efforts that we're doing at Delta. So outside of our dojo, we have a lot of other people that we have to help transform and get them onto Agile practices and utilizing DevOps tools and DevOps culture. So some of the ways that we're doing that is through Bits and Bytes Lunch and Learns, where individuals can come and share best practices, share the cool things that they're doing within their area. We also recently delivered our first hackathon last week, actually, and it was really great. We had 17 teams participate, and 300 people were a part of that whole thing. So that was a really great way to introduce teams into Agile mindset and DevOps tools, and also cloud technologies that we're implementing at Delta. So what's next for us? We're going to continue to scale. So as I mentioned, we have a lot of Agile teams at Delta that are part of large value streams. So our goal now is to make sure that we're focusing on those teams and maturing them as a part of that value stream so that we can deliver value to our customers both externally and internally faster. We're also working on developing an operating model for team coaching versus team of teams coaching. So there's a lot of great coaches at Delta. One sitting right there, Brent, hi. But we're working on trying to figure out how we take that coaching aspect and apply it not only to the team level, but to an entire value stream of teams. And how do we not introduce coach burnout in the process? So that's what we're working on. Lastly, curriculum alignment and maturation. So in the past year and a half in the dojo, we have lots of curriculum, lots of offerings, but we want to make sure that the same things we're teaching in the dojo are being presented in the organization, so we have continuity across our entire company, essentially. So we're working on making sure that we're working with our Agile partners in developing courses that can be consumed by our entire enterprise. So what do we need help with? We need help with creating a coach pipeline. So we started off with the dojo, and as I said, we're working on scaling that and reaching higher heights with it. So one of the questions I have for you all is, how do you create a coach pipeline where your coaches are continuing to grow and flourish while helping your organization do the same? Next, how do we grow coaches into unicorns? We started off in the dojo having coaches that were focused on specific competency areas, but we want to make sure that our delivery team is cross-functional because we don't want to create any constraints in the system. So if you've had experience with growing coaches into unicorns, I would love to hear from you. And lastly, dojo enabling of scaled teams. How can we best utilize our dojo to enable those entire value streams so that they see the same value that we've seen at the team level? And with that, I want to thank you so much for being here, and I invite you to connect with us on LinkedIn or even at the conference. I love this community because we all share so readily. So thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Question? Okay. So I didn't know I had time for questions. I have 5 minutes. Great. So are there any questions in the room? Yeah, right.
1 second, because we're recording.
Okay.
So I'm curious about, so we have a pretty diverse set of teams and different remote members of teams. So I know it's best in person, but how do you manage teams who want to go into the dojo, but they also have full-time remote members of those teams?
Right. That's a reality that we deal with. Are you talking remote in the sense of like offshore time difference as well, or just simply geographically dispersed?
Mostly the geographically dispersed.
Gotcha.
But I mean, I think we do have very remote teams in very different time zones. So I'm more curious about the geographically dispersed, but also the time zone as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we do, a lot of our teams in the dojo have been split, like half in Atlanta, half in Minneapolis. In our dojo, we use technology to connect the teams through Cisco boards, things like that, and that's been very helpful. We also use collaboration tools like Slack to ensure that, this communication can happen even if you're not online, and you still have a full understanding of where the team is going from a communication standpoint. So yeah, that's how we solve for it. Yeah.
I have a question about how do you develop your coaches for DevOps tools? Agile coaches in the industry, there is a pretty established procedures to train those people. What about the DevOps tools, craftsmanship?
Yeah, we were really lucky that we started with the tools. So it was innate to me as a DevOps coach. I stood up the tools. I had a good understanding of what was needed from not only, a usability standpoint, but from a best practice standpoint. So that was how we developed that. But for newer coaches that came into the dojo, we practiced something called pairing, right? So we paired coaches with individuals that have been a part of the organization to make sure that our message was consistent to the teams. And that's how you perpetuate the good behaviors, right? So we have a dev practice lead who a lot of our coaches work with as well. So that's how we make sure that the DevOps craftsmanship is tip top.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask in terms of prioritization, I know you're going to get a lot of requests coming in. How do you prioritize the teams that come into the hangar? And also, what is your lead time? The lead time that you typically see?
Yeah, so prioritizing teams. So previously what we've done, because of the way we were funded, we went with teams that had funding at the time, and we have a very basic requirements for a team coming in. You need a full team, you need to be dedicated, and you need to write the right mindset. So if you had that, we would work with you. We didn't want to really turn teams away because we wanted to make sure that we were there for all those teams who were going to, wanted to transform, right? And as far as lead time, I've seen us intake a team and start them 2 days later, just because you want to keep the momentum going, right? If a team is excited, and usually after intake and discovery they are, you want to keep that energy up and make sure that you're garnering that towards their learning and curriculum. So, yeah.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I enjoyed listening to it.
Thank you.
My question is around, you showed a chart, which was a spider graph. And you mentioned that that's used as a assessment tool.
Right.
Is that something that is a standardized assessment, or is it a self-assessment that teams are taking?
Right. Yeah, so it's the assessment covers all of our competency areas, and essentially in the beginning when we stood up the dojo, we came up with what are the questions or the best practices that within these competency areas that teams need to be practicing. So it goes from 1 through 5. It is the standard. We're kind of doing it, or not doing it, right? And teams actually sit in a classroom and they take it themselves. So we clarify if needed, but it's all about the team's understanding of how they're doing these practices. We don't coach. What we saw previously when we did facilitate the session, there was a lot of groupthink, right? So you would have one person that would answer the question this way, and the rest of the team would be like, oh yeah, what he said. So we made it more so individual focused, and we accumulate the grades or accumulate the scores together to generate that chart. And we've found much more consistency doing it that way versus the group kind of talking it out. So it's been really great.
We have time for one last question here. Anything else? Guys, please hold and find Jasmine out in the lobby. Here you go.
Thank you. So we've heard all about that. Some of the biggest challenges that everybody's facing is the cultural transformation that has to be reinforced and embedded in a lot of these efforts. How does the dojo balance the technical delivery, all the technical aspects and the cultural aspects and the reinforcement and bring it together in the program?
Right. I think that this is where the dojo shines, right? Because a team is really surrounded by coaches that are experienced in the behaviors that they should be doing, and we have the ability to course correct. As we see them doing behaviors that are anti-patterns, we can correct them in that very moment, and that's way more meaningful than letting them get down the road of bad behaviors. So that's how we balance it. So as we're coaching on technical items and we see them practicing, developing, branching strategies, we'll participate in those ceremonies, merge requests, things like that to make sure that they're going on the right path and course correct if necessary.